Hey guys, Frank with Tithely. Great to be with you this morning. It's a good day. It's Monday. It's 9 o'clock. I've got a great guest today. We're trying to build up our channel here. So if you're tuning in live and you're watching on YouTube, we'd love for you to subscribe. Click the little like button. Help us spread the word. We've been doing these shows every week, and for a while we were doing them daily. So for quite some time, just interviewing church leaders, pastors, small group leaders, volunteers of churches of all shapes and sizes, talking about church during COVID and just what's going on. So it's been a great show. There's been tons of people tuning in. We'll get a few hundred people live and then lots of people that watch it recorded. So definitely would love for you to subscribe to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about kind of creative ways to do church. And one of the ways that you've probably seen springing up, but it's like drive-in church. So people are going to movie theaters or parking in parking lots or renting out stadiums, and they're sitting in their cars and doing church. So today I'm going to have a great conversation with Jeff Smith, who leads a church in Dallas, about how they've been doing drive-in church. So without further ado, let me add Jeff. Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
What's up, man?
It's good to see you, and I'm pumped to talk about drive-in church.
Me too. I was trying to figure out how to win my free AirPods, but okay.
We should mention that. No, you can't win. But for everyone who's tuning in, we always give away a pair of AirPods, just for being active. Again, it's part of trying to build up the channel, have some fun. So leave a comment. Let us know where you're from. Let us know if you've done drive-in church, and we'd love your experience or questions. If you're thinking about doing drive-in church, pop them in the comments. And just fun fact, Jeff and I have known each other for 20 years, 18 years, yeah. 20 years. Jeff used to be out in San Diego, which is where I call home. And Jeff has moved to Dallas. I feel like you bounced around a little bit.
I did. Mostly in Texas after San Diego, mostly in Texas then.
You know, I got love for Texas, but I don't know how you go from San Diego to Texas. So, you know, we're just gonna...
For my wife, that's what it was for.
Yes, understood. That's how I ended up in San Diego. So
yeah.
Not for your wife, but for mine, girlfriend.
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Yeah. Just for clarity. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, how you got into ministry, a little bit about the church you lead, just so the audience can get to know you.
Sure. Yeah. I was born on the East Coast. I was raised in the West Coast. Grew up in San Diego. I think actually out of high school, I went to San Diego State. Mainly because Frank let me chill them in his dorm room, I think one weekend. That's why I wanted to go to state, but also why I didn't want to live in the dorms.
The dorms were great, though. It was such a good time.
Those metal beds scared me to death.
Yeah, it was a bit.
Yeah, I did that. And then about 2006, I moved to Austin, Texas. I was dating my now wife, Kelly, and she was going to Texas State at this time, which is about 30 minutes south of Austin. And so I ended up going there, getting in-state residency, and then transferring down to Texas State.
Yeah.
And then I ended up going. I did a part-time internship in the church with the church. I believe it was around 2008, and that was a fun experience. It was definitely learning, but I think it was the first time I felt like my character was being challenged, and I liked it.
Yeah.
And so it's something I definitely pursued. And then in 2011, my wife and I got an opportunity to go work with college students in Dallas. And so we really enjoyed that. And then in 2015, we were asked to move up to Denton, which is a college town just north of Dallas, in the DFW Metroplex. And so we've been working with marrieds and singles and college students since then. And then in last year, we reorganized our church in Dallas, and so now we have about 200 people when we meet on Sundays, together. And so it's been a really cool time, and so we just enjoyed the ride for sure.
Yeah. So your location, I think you were mentioning before, there's like 6 locations, mm-hmm. and you lead one of the locations there, a couple hundred people. So super cool, man. Well, let's jump in. So
all right.
Talk to me before we get, I guess, into the drive-in church. What's COVID been like for you guys? Like, how are you guys coping? How's the church doing? And give us a little bit of the 4-month journey up to drive-in churches.
It's been interesting. So I think the first thing we did, I think like everybody, is we wanted to take some precautions, make sure people were safe going through it, and then really being wise and evaluating kind of where things were at. I think the thing I didn't want to do was to rush into something that wasn't going to work well, or we were going to have to reevaluate anyway. And so the idea for drive-in service, drive-in church became very, very attractive. And hey, we're just looking for ways to meet. And I think our perspective really was there was a lot of obstacles at that time. And so I think instead of focusing on the obstacles, we were just trying to find answers. And I think that really helped us. Okay, hey, how do we do this? What's the solution here to really just find a way for all of us to meet together? And so that's been going on for probably close to 2 months off and on. We've had some cancellations because it's either rained or the place we were meeting thought it was going to rain.
Yeah.
So with all the sound equipment, they just wanted to play it safe. But it's definitely been a journey. We've learned a lot. Kind of how do we do this? What are some things to look out for? And so we've had a lot of fun and learned a lot through that about 4 months or so trying to figure all this out.
Yeah. So you went all church online sometime in March.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sounds like for a couple of months you were doing church online and sorting that out. And then somehow this opportunity came up. So who had the idea of doing drive-in church, and how did it look? Because it also sounds like your location is doing it. Maybe not all the other, the 5 other locations may not be doing it. So how did the idea come about, and how did you guys get started doing it?
So my wife and I, it was probably more her. We'd heard rumblings of people that were thinking about doing it, and so it was an idea that seemed like it was dropped in our lap more than anything else.
Yeah.
So we said, hey, let's run with this. We really didn't know what it meant or what it was going to look like, but we did know in Texas it was going to be really, really hot because it's the middle of summer. So we were probably going to face different challenges than say other people that were doing that. And so that's kind of how it formulated.
Yeah.
Just trying to, hey, this sounds good. Is this obtainable? All right, let's see if we can make this work.
Yeah. And for clarity, your wife had the idea, which is pretty common in my house too. So,
well, when I have ideas, I usually run it through her, and then her idea is better. And I was like, oh, I should have asked first. So that's a good chain of events, usually how that works out.
Oh, yes. Okay. So first, like doing the first service, how did you find a location? How did you even go to whatever location, or maybe even describe, where are you going? Is it a drive-in movie theater? Is it
It's in a hotel parking lot.
Okay. It's a hotel parking lot.
Where we meet for services, we meet at the Embassy Suites in Denton. And they'd been calling us, kind of staying up to date with the information that the state of Texas was putting out on meeting. And they were just trying to find ways for us to connect. And I think like a lot of places, they're looking for business. And so it was something where we were able to get a very favorable rate, and they have set up the stage outside. In fact, the way their hotel is positioned, they've got a great backside of the parking lot. And we've been able to meet back there, and so we have stage, we have sound, and we have plenty of parking, which has actually been really good. It's more wide than deep because I think it's allowed for this. So we have the speakers set up that way. There's enough people that can kind of at least see the stage.
Right.
We've had to stagger the cars, so sometimes you get stuck behind a car. So we've done that. But yeah, so it's been a really good location at the hotel. Mm-hmm. And I think like everywhere, they're very willing to make it work right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we can charge you to use our parking lot. Yes, let's do that.
Yes. And we will be there.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. So you get on the phone and you're like, hey, could we do church in the parking lot? And they were like, oh yeah, let's give it a go.
They have a stage. It sounds like they were a little bit ahead of this. They had a stage we've got a power outlet out there. We know where the stage goes. We've got it all set up. We're like, have you done this before? Like, no. I was like, I don't know if that's true or not. But I mean, it sounded like they had kind of already thought it through.
Right.
At some point, if anybody was going to meet out there, they'd have the good conditions to do so.
Yeah, love it. So real quick, there's a bunch of people who joined. So we're talking about creative ways to do church. We're talking about drive-in church services right now. Today's an interesting kind of show. If you have questions and you're watching us live, please pop them in the chat. We'll try to field a few questions today from the audience. We've got another incognito gentleman that joins us for all these shows. So he's behind the scenes watching all the chat. He's going to pop some questions into the chat. Leave your name, where your church is at, those kind of things, and we'll try to get to some of those questions today. But again, talking drive-in church. So Jeff, you get the location, you guys go for it. How do you get it through like the overall church leadership and kind of those discussions? Like you're one of the locations, you're like, we're going to do church outside. Everyone else is probably still meeting remote. Was it a pretty easy thing to just start talking with the staff and get it approved, or I don't know, just get everyone on board?
I think one of the things that's interesting is we have a lot of groups that are in different places. My group is in a college town. It's a little bit younger. There's a little bit more of a freedom to, I don't know how to nice to say it. We just kind of do what we want up in Denton. In fact, that's kind of the local flavor. It's like, oh, he's from Denton. Yeah, whatever. It's assumed that something weird's going to happen.
Okay.
So we get to away with a little bit more because of there. But I think a lot of us were just looking for ways to do it. How do we come together? Since we pushed forward, there's been another group that's now doing drive-in services. I believe they're meeting Saturday nights.
Yeah.
Again, trying to deal with the heat. And then we have one group that's really, really small, meeting in like a room that's, I don't know, 100,000 times bigger than where they are. It's 20 people in a 600 seated room. So we're trying to find different scenarios in which to move forward. And so these are the best three we've had thus far. And I think once I pitched the idea, I think it was like, yeah, all right, let's try something.
Let's give it a go. Yeah.
Let's give it a go. But there was a lot of questions that came with that for sure. We definitely want to be wise, and safety and health is obviously a big concern, and so we want to make sure we're communicating those things. But we're trying to find solutions.
Yeah.
So good.
How many people? So if you've got a couple hundred in a normal in-person service, how many people are attending the drive-in service?
So we've had up to about 100 on a couple, and then usually about 40%, 30 to 40%. Especially with the summer, you've got vacations, on top of everything else.
Right.
I've talked to some people like, yeah, my kid wouldn't wake up. And I was like, I get that. So there's
You're doing it early. You're going 8:30. Is that what you said?
Yeah, we're starting at 8:30, and our goal is to have the entire service within 45 minutes. Because again, it's Texas, it's hot, but then also the attention span is a big deal. So for example, we know that a lot of times kids will come, and so we hand out coloring sheets with crayons just to keep them engaged.
Yeah.
Water bottles, snacks, but even with all those things, which I do believe help, you're sitting in a car in Texas. So we're just trying to think about as we move forward. So I think our longest service was about 45 minutes, and that's usually around where we stay in timing.
Yeah. No, that's smart. So you're thinking about length of time. You're obviously meeting a little earlier. It sounds like 8:30 instead of maybe a normal 10 o'clock or a 9:30 or something like that for heat purposes. What do you do? There was a good question. I can't see who asked the question. I'd love to know who asked it, Paul, if you know. But there's a question: is there a way that you're tracking people who may be attending for the first time so you can connect later?
That's a great question.
Yeah. So any like visitors that are coming, friends that are coming, doing any kind of like tracking so that you can follow up afterwards.
So the way we've designed the parking lot is it's kind of in one way, out one way. And so when you pull up to a spot, you're met by someone with a mask on, handing you like a 2-in-1 communion cup, and a bottle of water and/or coloring packets. And then what we do is we escort or point out to where your parking spot will be. And so this allows us to see who we know, and then also see if we've got some first-time friends coming as well. What's actually been really interesting is where the hotel is located. there's an apartment complex that sits behind us. And every Sunday, without fail, we've had people walk over, hearing our service, and just kind of stand in the back of the lot and participate. And so that's actually been really cool. A lot of people, hey, just moved to Texas looking for a church, but at the same time, haven't really been able to get out and look for one because of everything going on.
And then you showed up like right in the backyard. So.
Oh, but here's the best. So one Sunday, our AV team was testing the speakers and decided to play, let's call it really loud rock and roll music at 6:30 in the morning. And so got a noise complaint. So the cop shows up, and by that time we had already transitioned to the lesson, and he just stayed for the service. So oh, cool. Yeah. And he just kind of hopped in, looked, and then stayed in the back till service was over. So we made sure we don't do that anymore. But that's been fun. But every Sunday without fail, we've had someone come. We also had one RV parked in our lot, and they forgot to move. So they were at service last Sunday because they just woke up and we were there.
Church. It's amazing.
So that's pretty good.
No, that Missy from Summit Church asked that question. Missy, thanks for the question. There's another, you mentioned communion. So you're passing out the little communion to-go cups, which taste terrible, but it's the only way to do it. So Bryant Harris said, how do you conduct communion service? So can you elaborate on that? Or is it mainly just the cups that you're passing out? And
yeah. So our whole service is extremely stripped down. For these reasons. And so what we do is we have a stage, we open up service with 2 songs, and you can definitely hear there's the people singing, which has kind of been cool, because otherwise it's
rolling down their windows, or do people leave their cars on for the AC, or what's the vibe there?
So you get both. So if you want to stay in your cars, essentially what we do is we put you in the back row. If you want to get out of your cars, we've opened up parking spaces, and we go every other. So your family can sit in a specific parking space and then 6 feet apart. And so we operate it like that. And so you can hear mostly the people who've gotten out of their car. And so that's been really cool. And then after the 2 songs, we usually have a welcome, thank you for coming. And then it's 1 to 2 songs. And then it's a sermunion, as we call it. Sermon with tied into the communion message, and then a time of meditation after that. And then we'll come back together at the end, close it out, and just kind of give further directions or thank people for coming, whatever. But we really try to, again, strip it down to that 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it's been good. So we're learning more.
When people are out of their cars sitting in the front, that's a clever way, like by parking spot. Are they in masks? Are you like, everyone wear a mask?
Well, yes, is the ones who are out of their car, they're with their family. And so most of the times they are, but then, kids. So we do our best. But they're a lot of people they'll take them off to sing. And so they'll stay off sometimes. So it's a mixed bag, but if they're keeping their social distancing, we feel really good about, hey, just stay in your parking spot. You get out afterwards, everybody throws on their mask to go talk to others.
Right. And then it sounds like the ushers passing things out, coloring books, bottled water, they're in masks as they're coming up to vehicles.
Yeah.
And all that.
My kids throwing stuff through their car.
Yeah, like, okay, roll the window down here.
Here's your crayons. Yeah.
So there was another question from Pastor Kevin in Manchester. He said, do you think it's okay to meet in a site that is not connected to the church building? So trying to kind of understand the question a little bit here. He says, our parking is shared with, and we're considering doing this in a nearby rented lot. So I think it's just more about like, you guys rent a building anyways. So you don't actually own the building you have church in. You rent a hotel, it sounds like, and you're actually renting the parking lot of the hotel that you normally meet in. Right.
Dallas, 2 of our locations has buildings that we lease. And so they meet there. And then our specific location, we have again, before all this, we have a consistent spot where pretty much every Sunday we were at the same hotel. And
right.
That same hotel allowed us to do so and just meet out there. I think for us, the consistency of the location was actually very helpful. And so my thought is, whatever you do, if possible, do it consistently.
Yeah.
Especially with a lot of the new people who've been walking up from the apartment complex. It's like they know where church is.
Right.
So that's been really helpful.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So what other logistics have been challenging? Because in my head, I've got, well, actually, someone asked another good question just about the sound. Ashley from the Southeastern Missouri Synod of the ELCA, who's a great customer of ours. Like, how do people connect into the sound? And that was actually from another gentleman that I missed, or maybe lady that I missed. But how do people get the sound in their car? Mm-hmm. And then also, Ashley was asking about like internet connection. Like, do you have Wi-Fi, and are people able to connect to Wi-Fi while they're at church?
So the answer is the sound is really loud. So we messed around.
Speakers. You got speakers on stage that are blasting out to the audience. They roll their windows down. And
we have two speakers up front, and then kind of like it would look if you were entering a building. You got the two here and the two wide, and then we added the two more even further down to kind of get that wide range. But then the depth, again, we're like 5-6 parking spots deep, so it's not very deep. But then as far as communicating, we played around with the FM transmitter idea. There was like a 1.5 to 2 month back order, because that seemed to be a very popular idea. And in fact, one of our other worship centers that does the outdoor service has been playing around with that. They have one. It's definitely an interesting bag. We felt like, hey, the less people needed to be here, the better it was going to be. We did sermon notes for a while, but then, people were on their phones, but they're watching, because I don't really have slides up there.
Right.
So we were just trying to strip everything away from it. And bottom line is, every day, probably people are on their computer or Zoom calling anyway. So this may be the most non-screen time they have.
Yeah.
But we do obviously stream, from Facebook and Instagram through the phones or whatever the medium is.
Yeah.
Connect with people who can't be there.
Right. So you guys, just on that note, you're getting 40-50% of the church to show up. You've obviously got another 50-60% not showing up. So are you streaming the service as well? And how are you guys doing that?
Yeah. So we've been streaming through Facebook and through Instagram. And so we have two phones at this time. Mostly it works, except one time my phone was on a tripod and the wind took it and then destroyed my phone. So you got about half the service, which was great. But then we learned, okay, someone's still got to hold the tripod. That's good.
Yeah.
But then it's interesting. So the Dallas DFW Church has its own virtual service that we do as kind of a unified front, very, in my opinion, very high level. And so that airs at 10 o'clock. So we have our outdoor service that meets at 8:30. And then right afterwards, church essentially, if you want, isn't done yet. You can go watch that service.
You can go there, or anybody who didn't attend in person has another live event going on at 10.
They can feel extra spiritual, and that's the idea. Just rein it in.
That's awesome. Okay, talk to me about you mentioned kind of how you're ushering people into park and controlling that. What about bathrooms? What about emergency situation? I'm in the middle and I got to go and I'm in my car. What about other things that I don't even realize could happen at a drive-in church service?
Right. So luckily the hotel right behind us, we kind of sit on the back side. And so there's a door that leads right inside, and the bathrooms they're right there.
Okay.
And so the way the service is kind of set up, one way in, one way out, as far as with the cars, we've created there's easy ways to get there. So people who need to go, we've had that many times. We've never had necessarily an issue with that. I think the ushers help. We get there early. We set up the cones so people know where to park, know where not to park. And so we try to make everything as clear as possible. We've had people holding signs up, come here, welcome, glad to have you. And then as they leave, goodbye. We'll sometimes, put bubbles out there, make it a fun, interactive thing. So it's got a rhythm to it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. How many volunteers? Great question from Jean Marie in Fort Worth, Texas. Come on, Unity Fort Worth.
You're not too far. It takes. So we've got we have our AV team, but our AV team is very stripped down. So we have two amazing brothers. Well, three, but one just got married. So two people did three people's job last Sunday, which he'll be back and help. And amen.
I was like, wait, you went on a honeymoon during the coronavirus pandemic? Like, were you?
They got in their car and drove from house to house, kind of thing. But no, yeah. So we have about three people who do that, and then what's interesting is, so one Sunday right after, basically right as I said amen, it started raining, and so everybody becomes an usher in some senses as we load things up. But we got three AV teams, and then we've got, I'd say, about a half dozen people who are showing up early with greeting, with setting up cones, setting up water bottles, and so I'd say in that sense, maybe 6 to 7. But what's been really interesting is, as far as the volunteers question goes, we've really tried to use this as an opportunity to find different ways to engage people. So we had one family, a family with kids. They decided they want to help, so we put them in charge. Okay, hey, I need you to put the coloring packets together, and if you can help us with this. So could we have done that? Absolutely. But I think the volunteers allows people to still buy into a church, even though it's not your traditional look, sense, feel.
Right.
So we're using more volunteers than we probably need, but intentionally, so they can still, hey, this is my church. I want to find a way to contribute here.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a big part of church life for a lot of people, right? It's like how they serve.
Right.
It's how they give, like they want to engage. And I think that's, in one of the early shows, I was talking to a pastor from C3 Atlanta, and he was talking about this topic and how they're trying, this was the beginning or early days of COVID, but he's like, yeah, we're trying to find virtual ways for people to serve, because people want to serve. They want to be ushers. They want to do this and that for the church. And that's gone in this environment, right? In a lot of ways. So that's cool. What, I guess, as we're kind of going on, I mean, if you're joining us, again, we keep getting more and more. If you're joining us, we're talking about creative ways to do church, specifically drive-in church. Jeff and his crew have been meeting in a hotel parking lot for the last 2 months, on and off. Sounds like about every week now, unless there's rain. But, getting about half the church to show up in person, social distance, sit in cars or sit in parking spots. They're passing out water and coloring books and communion cups and blaring the music too loud so that the neighbors have to come and see what's going on. So it's super, super cool. We're actually doing in San Diego, we're doing our first drive-in service this weekend, I believe. And we have 5 locations. So all 5 locations are coming together. So, that'll be 1,500 people or so. It's there's this place called the Del Mar Fairgrounds. And like not right at the fairgrounds, but kind of across the street, there's a big parking lot, like a dirt parking lot. And so we're just going for it. And I don't have, I'm not on staff, so I don't have all the specifics, but everyone's going to show. I think we're doing it at night. I think it's at 6:30, or it's either 5:30 or 6:30 start time. And we're just going for it. So I'm really fascinated to see what it all looks like personally. Jeff, what are some of the things that you guys have learned along the way about how to do this well?
Well, we've learned patience. We've definitely learned you're going to make a ton of mistakes, and phone breaking mid-service. One Sunday, I felt like I was looking forward the whole time, and I ended up with half of my face more tan than the other because the sun was hitting one direction. So I'm like, okay, gotta move. But I think some of the things that we've really thought, like looking at the kind of the whole, I don't want to use the word like production, but kind of the whole experience, worship, is that you want to give people reason to keep coming. And so, throwing the idea now around of, okay, what are some sermon series, not necessarily these long drawn out things, but something to focus on, something that entices or engages people in such a way, hey, we want to come and come back.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been a couple of things we've really been talking about recently. What are some things that aren't just going to be, I mean, not just hot button, but hey, we want to learn something. We want to engage on some level. So that's what we're really focusing on now, and really trying to figure out, because I think that will engage people, create more buzz to get people to come back.
Yeah. I feel like breakfast burritos or something like that would be a great. Are breakfast burritos a thing in Denton? Because they are in San Diego.
They are not the quality of what you have, but there are definitely one or two places.
Whatever the breakfast food of choice is in Denton, I feel like you should serve breakfast at church, and immediate comebacks and more people from the apartment complex. All the things are happening.
So here's the problem in Texas. Probably the breakfast of choice, and I'm probably going to get heat for this, is probably biscuits and gravy.
Okay.
The thing with biscuits and gravy is you're going to sleep after you eat biscuits and gravy. So it's a catch-22. I could serve that.
Yeah.
Church has got to be short, or it's not going to happen. So,
yeah. You got to make sure you get to it quick, and no delay. Are there any limits? Good question. Again, from Bryant chiming in here. Are there any limitations on the amount of people who can attend, like either government restrictions or recommendations from the CDC, anything like that you've run into?
So it's interesting. At last time I checked, religious organizations in many ways, in fact, in most ways, were exempt. That doesn't mean we can't be wise. In fact, we want to be overly wise in some senses of what we do. But essentially what we're trying to do is, encourage people to wear masks. I think groups of 10 is the size for most indoor meeting places, and then social distancing of 6 feet outside of that, those groups of 10. And that's what the parking spots have been kind of used as social barriers set up to kind of help people in that way, or people just, stay in their cars. So religious events are in most cases exempt, but I'm like, I still think there's a lot of wisdom here. You still want to be wise, because the other thing that you really deal with is people's security. I mean, in some ways they're stepping out on faith to come to church. And so we want to make sure we understand that, and we're sensitive to that. But still at the same time, looking for answers.
That's a great point. Just, people, every church, look, it's happening with schools, right? All the kids are going back to school in a month or so, and the schools are facing it. Churches are facing it. Like, the comfortability of different groups, like everybody's got the people that are like, let's go back. And then you got the people on the other side that are like, we're not going back until there's a vaccine. And you've got everything in the middle. Right. So how are you guys handling that? So if you've got roughly half or 40% showing up, you've got the other half not showing up. And how are you communicating effectively? How are you making people feel comfortable for not coming? Like, what's that look like for you guys?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of layers to that. I mean, especially the specific groups. So we really try to work through with 200 members. It's difficult to get to everybody. So we really want to work through the small group leaders. And so many of those small group leaders can come, and some of them for health reasons or for whatever, they can't. And I have no issue either way with that. But I think one of the things is it forces each group to be creative on how are they going to engage specifically. Right. So what we've realized is a blanket statement or a blanket charge is ineffective. And so in some sense, we're trying to go case by case. Okay, what's the dynamic of this group? So we have one Bible talk that's a little bit older. Okay, they're less likely to participate in person. That's totally fine. Okay, well, how do we engage them, help them, love them? But also, how do they engage, help, and love? And so what we've seen is each group, each demographic is very different. And so I think a lot of what I've been trying to do, my wife's been trying to do, is, okay, know the condition of their flock, and really try to figure out what's best. And so actually over the next couple of weeks, we've done this already. We're going back over the next couple of weeks, trying to get with a lot of those small group leaders. Where's your group at? What do you need? How can we help? Whether it's we'll get together social distancing, or we'll do it over Zoom. But hey, how can we help you guys be most effective? And then also, how can we help you feel loved? Because I think that's the other thing that a lot of people are missing right now is just they just feel distant and kind of isolated.
Right. Yeah. It's hard. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to not be in person with people and feel connected. Mm-hmm. And Zoom fatigue or video meeting fatigue is real. And so you kind of bundle all those things together, and it's a bit crazy. So
I'm grateful people showed up to this with all the fatigue, just to be honest. So
yeah, totally. Well, look, if you're just joining us, we've been talking about how to do drive-in church. And if you're still on, again, I would love for you to subscribe to the channel. We do this show every week, and we're interviewing guys like Jeff, talking about all kinds of things related to leading churches. So give the show a like, subscribe to the show. And also, if you're around and you're commenting, we give away a pair of Apple AirPods, which are awesome for all the Apple users. And I guess if you win and you don't use an iPhone or something like that, you can always
send them to me,
send them to Jeff, sell them. That's perfectly fine. Donate them to somebody in your church.
Okay, yeah, that's a better idea.
So I guess, Jeff, as we wrap up, I mean, anything that you would sort of share with others that are thinking about doing something like this, like an outdoor service of sorts, what would you encourage them with? How would you kind of help them get started a little better than maybe you guys did?
Well, I think I'd dive in feet first. Just go. I think our group is different than each different group in our kind of 6 different worship centers. Your group's going to be a whole lot different, but I would strongly encourage you guys to just find a way to meet together. It's interesting. One of the things when you kind of look through the scriptures is, bottom line is, Jesus found ways to just touch people, especially those who, lepers or who were in some senses not being touched or interacted with in any other circumstance, but he found a way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously he was Jesus. And so that's very helpful.
Yeah.
And so I think oftentimes we can fall short and see the obstacles and not, search for creative ways or those different things. So I just think, hey, jump in and do it, and then kind of figure it out along the way. Because what we've really seen is people want to meet.
Yeah.
You go outside. I mean, you go to the pool, you go to the grocery store, people are out. They're out.
Yep.
So there are people who want to meet. And what we've seen, especially from the neighbors that are in the apartment complex, the multiple neighbors, is people they're seeing their mortality at the moment in some sense. And they're asking questions about God. And, us pulling up in a parking lot right next to their apartment is a perfect opportunity. So I think oftentimes you're just as open as your mouth is. And people are going to be the same way. And so just creating opportunities for God to work has kind of been our thought process.
Yeah. Love that, man. Well, this has been awesome. Thanks for the time. There was another question at the very end, so I'm just going to throw it out.
Okay.
How are you guys handling giving, like the offering moment? Are you passing trays? Are you giving everything digitally? Like, what's that look like for you guys?
So we aren't passing trays. So one Sunday, I'll let me rephrase that. One Sunday, what we did is kind of in the drive up, we had, hey, if you'd like to give, you could do so here. But the reality is people were giving online. They were giving through Tithely. They were giving through.
That's the right answer, obviously, by the way.
So we had one person in a group of 100, about one person gave physically. And so we're like, okay, we'll scratch that. So sometimes we'll remind people in the welcome, but oftentimes we're reminding people in our weekly emails, hey, we want to do so. I think here's probably the hardest thing we've tried to wrestle with. I don't know if we really even have an answer for it yet, is you've got some people financially this really hasn't had any impact on, but then you have some people financially it's been a huge burden on. And so how do you talk about money in that time? And so I think what we've really tried to do is talk about the heart to give, the heart to love, whether it's financially, but also kind of, just with people.
Yeah.
And so I think that's more been the message recently. And just to speak honestly, God has really blessed our group in Dallas as a whole, and our giving is over, which has been very encouraging.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I think it's in large part because I think people see God, kind of in these circumstances, and they obviously feel like, hey, I can't physically do much, but hey, how can I still give back? So that's been it. So we really don't talk about giving per se, at least in our group, but it's more of, let me talk about your heart for a little bit. And that's, I think, a good, helpful movement.
Yeah. Love that. Well, man, this has been awesome. Where can folks go to check out, I guess they can't really check out the drive-in service, but maybe via the live stream,
Live stream.
Where can people go check you out?
So we've got on Instagram, we are Denton. What is it again? Denton Worship, DFW Denton Worship, and that's our Instagram. And then we're Alpha Omega on Facebook. And then, but our church YouTube page is DFW Church. And
There
so
you
we go DFW Church, and you'll find us there. You find us on the website dfwchurch.org. So that's those. We've got many ways, many different avenues to find us.
Love that. DFW Church on YouTube. That's the easiest one.
Easiest one.
Jeff, appreciate it, man. Everyone that tuned in today live, appreciate you guys. We'll catch you next week, and have a fantastic week and a great, whether you're digital or you're meeting drive-in services, have a great worship service this Sunday.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, man. Have a good time.